Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10. Between now and December 16th, if you use this promo code, you will automatically be entered into a drawing where 13 winners will each win one of the Flipside Gaming Masterpiece Collection playmats. See the description below for more details. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to part 6 of our 6-part Ultimate Masters full set review. Today, we feature the colorless cards, colorless spells, artifacts, and lands. Now, if you've been watching this series, you know what to expect here. We're going to look at each card individually and discuss how it can be best utilized in the limited environments, draft and sealed. These are all reprints, so we know what they do in the formats where they are currently legal, so this is truly a limited set review. Quickly before we get started, just a fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to support the channel. Our Patreon page is down there. You're also going to find links to products on Amazon, including Ultimate Masters. And finally, Flipside Gaming still offering a promo code for our viewers. Hopefully you can save some cash while you support the channel. And as always, thank you not only to the folks that look at those links, but to each and every one of you. Y'all make the channel what it is. So let's get into it. All Is Dust is our first card today, and you're going to see a lot of rares and mythics in today's video. Adjust expectations. You're not going to get those cards all that often when you play limited, but when they pop up, they could be a nice surprise, and they will be very good in most circumstances. This one, no exception. 7 casting cost board sweep, basically. Now, there's a little bit going on here. Each player sacrifices all colored permanents they control. Sacrifice is nice. It gets around things like regeneration. And aside from that, maybe you have a deck that happens to have more colorless cards than your opponent. Well, wonderful. That could be an advantage for you here. But even if you don't, you're still going to play this just simply because it's a panic button. If you're falling behind, or maybe you hold this in your hand a little bit and hope that your opponent overcommits, it will be great for you. Or if you're winning the game and you draw it, well, maybe it's a bummer there, but hopefully you can still slam the door on the game and this didn't slow you down all that much. The risk is definitely worth running this if you have the opportunity. Remember too, this says sacrifice all colored permanents, not just creatures. Artisan of Kozilek. Alright, this costs 9, but you get a 10-9 Eldrazi with Annihilator too. Yeah, this is going to be worth the trouble. Not to mention the ability, when you cast this spell, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. We already know white and black are interested in reanimation, but this card could open that up further. Couple things to remember here. With Eldrazi's, typically the trigger is going to occur on casting, so if it enters the battlefield, it's a no-go. So if you cheat this into play, say you reanimate it or something like that, well, you still got a 10-9 Annihilator too. You're not having a bad day, but you're not going to be able to reanimate another creature. You have to cast it to get that ability to trigger. On the positive side, though, if you cast this spell and it's countered, you still get that cast effect. Aside from that, though, this is going to be very achievable to cast, I think, in limited. If you're able to get a little ramp behind this, and red and green does have at least some mild ramp, and we're going to look at some good ramp cards today that are colorless, this is very, very achievable, and it's going to be awesome for you when it happens. Eldrazi Conscription. Alright, this is a sweet rare. Now, first off, in a vacuum, 8 casting cost to play this. It's extremely powerful, giving something +10/+10 trample and Annihilator too. That could be game-ending if your opponent does not have an answer. Not going to feel good if you get 2-for-1s here, considering this costs 8, but you just mitigate that risk, right? You do have hexproof creatures in the set. That's one way to go with this. Aside from some of the hexproof or even the heroic cards, which you can find in white, blue, red, or green, there's also some other tricks like Sovereigns of Alara, which can take this right out of your deck and put it onto a creature in play. There's Iridescent Drake, which can take this out of the graveyard and put it on itself. So look for those opportunities to exploit this card. Overall, though, it's going to be awesome no matter what, and I do think 8's pretty reasonable generally for limited. It's a high-end card, but again, with some ramp behind it, you could get it out relatively quick sometimes, I think, in this set. Emrakul the Aeon's Torn. Alright, this is a mythic. It's a good thing it's a mythic, too, because this card's powerful. 15 casting cost, but if you hardcast this thing, you're probably winning the game. I can't see how you could lose, honestly. 15/15 creature with Annihilator 6. Flying, protection from colored spells, and it can't be countered. Then also, when you cast it, you take an extra turn after this one, so you don't have to really worry about summoning sickness. The thing is insane, right? Now, let's say I don't hardcast it. Let's say I cheat it into play. How do I do that? Well, there's cards like Through the Breach. There are graveyard recursion cards as well at instant speed. That's the trick. They have to be at instant speed, because if this goes to the graveyard, you get that shuffle effect to trigger. But you can use an instant speed recursion spell before everything shuffles, and that will be very good for you. Now, if that's the case, then you don't get the extra turn, but that's okay, because you still got a flying, protection from colored spells, Annihilator 6, 15/15 creature. You're probably still in really good shape in that case, right? So this card is amazing. Play it unless you don't think your build is going to be able to get it into play, Or maybe you're on the Laboratory Maniac plan and you're trying to mill yourself out. If that's the case, the shuffle effect could really mess you up, and that's true of all the Eldrazi Titans. Karn Liberated, another mythic that's not going to show up a lot. I'm not here to tell you that this card is going to be much better in one build over another. This card's just insane. 6 loyalty for 7 mana. It gets a +4 if target player exiles a card from their hand. Exile, which is very important, of course, in this particular set. Also, the -3 exiles target permanent. Permanent, not just non-land permanent, not creature, but permanent. And the -14, if you get there, should win you the game in most cases. So, if you have the opportunity to play Karn, play Karn. Kozilek Butcher of Truth as the Mythic Parade continues, and yeah, this one maybe not as strong as Emrakul, but who cares? This is still a 12/12 Annihilator 4. When you cast it, draw 4 cards. Only costs 10 compared to 15, so that's kind of nice. Again, if you cheat it in, you're not drawing those cards, but who cares? Annihilator 4, 12/12, you'll be pretty happy. Alright, another Mythic, Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre, 11 casting cost this time for a 10/10 Indestructible with Annihilator 4. And if you cast it, you get to destroy target permanent. Yeah, that's maybe the least exciting of some of those cast abilities we've seen so far, but it's still not bad. And you get an indestructible 10/10 Annihilator 4 out of the deal too. So again, if you cheat this into play, you don't get that cast trigger, but still, you're going to be really happy with what you do have. Okay, we did have an Eldrazi at uncommon, now we get one at common. Ulamog's Crusher, it costs 8 for an 8/8 Annihilator 2. It does have to attack each turn. Now, this is going to be at the top of a lot of people's curves, I think, because it's actually achievable to find this more often in Draft and Sealed. And it's a good card. Yes, the drawback being you have to attack, so if you are behind, that could be bad for you sometimes. But most of the time, you want to attack in with this anyway. The Annihilator 2 is going to be punishing enough, and also it's an 8/8. And even if they chump block this, they're still losing a chunk of board state, and 8 casting cost is not all that bad. Very achievable in the set for sure. As we move on to artifacts from colorless spells, we have Cathodian. Maybe this can actually get you closer to one of those Eldrazi Titans, who knows? But this is a 3 casting cost 3/3. Those are pretty good stats, as a matter of fact. Like, I would play this as a curve-filling creature just on its own, as a matter of fact, in this environment. And if it dies, I get to add 3 colorless mana to my mana pool. So I kind of bank the mana, in other words. And if it dies in combat or something, yeah, maybe it's a little awkward if I can't use the mana at that moment. But at the same time, if I could sacrifice this, and you know there's ways to do that, especially in black and red, then maybe I could get the mana when I need it and use it to pull off a big colorless or green spell, perhaps. Engineered Explosives. Okay, it's a rare here, but the thing with this card is you want to make sure you have enough ways to put different color into it when you cast it, or the Sunburst is going to make it maybe not quite as good. It's also a little situational. I mean, there's times where maybe your opponent has some really good 3 casting cost things out, and you also have a lot of important 3 casting cost things out because this is a reciprocal effect. So that could be a little bit awkward. If I'm only on like 2 colors, for example, maybe I don't bother playing this, or I side it in if it feels like my opponent has a lot of really important 2 casting cost cards or something along those lines. But if I can pour more mana into it, it's a nice panic button type effect as well. Maybe it doesn't always work out to your advantage, but I'm going to run it for the times that it will. Keep in mind too, this does destroy non-land permanents, so it can take care of a variety of different issues for you. Heap Doll. This is another way to stop your opponent from targeting something in their graveyard, or at least slow them down. If they see this is on the battlefield, they realize that you could stop them from doing what they want to do, and they might not be able to hit that big reanimation target that they want to hit. There are also a few cards in the set that grant abilities out of the graveyard. This is a 1/1 for 1, so I'm not going to main deck this for the most part, nothing too exciting there. But when I need to bring it in to stop some graveyard shenanigans, I certainly will. Mana Vault, this thing is nuts. It's a mythic. If you happen to get it, congratulations, it's awesome. You pay 1, you tap it for 3 colorless mana. They give you this little drawback here. It doesn't untap unless you pay 4 mana, and if it stays tapped, every turn you take a point of damage. Oh, boo-hoo, I'll take the point of damage for my 3 mana for just 1, right? This thing's crazy, and yeah, you get big plays out of this. And sure, it could be one of the big Eldrazi's or something you could be building towards, but simply just getting ahead of curve by this much is great no matter what your deck is. I don't care what build you're in. You could be in the most conservative mana build where your highest casting cost is like 5. I'm still going to tell you to play this. It's awesome. Mere Servitor. This is actually a really good common in the set because of all the interactions where this card becomes better. It's a 1/1 for 1, so okay, maybe it doesn't sound super exciting. And it has a reciprocal effect, which is kind of interesting. As long as you or your opponent have a copy of this in play, whenever it gets to an upkeep of a player that has this in play, everybody gets to take any copies of this that are in the graveyard and put them directly into play. So granted, if you're at parity and you and your opponent both happen to have a bunch of these, that could be a little strange, maybe not likely in a draft, but you never know, I guess, with sealed. But if you do happen to have these and you're the only one doing it especially, there's so much you can do with it. You can sacrifice these things for benefit and then they're going to come back. You can discard them to a discard outlet. You're going to get them back that way so you didn't just waste the card. If you're milling yourself, you're still going to get the opportunity to put them into play and get board presence. They are very persistent. They're very annoying. As long as you can get one into play, that's the trick. This could be good with white too because it's a 1 casting cost creature. White can juggle small creatures pretty easily, so that should ensure that you can get one of these in play, hopefully. It's actually pretty sweet. Just think about all the different things you can do with it in your particular build before you cut it. Patchwork Gnomes. Okay, discard outlet. I'm on board. Sign me up because there's a lot of reasons to discard things. White and black have a strong reanimation strategy, so if I need to get that reanimation target into my graveyard, wonderful. You're going to find madness cards, especially in black-red. This is going to trigger madness. Black or green may have interest in building up the graveyard for delve or other effects. It's a 2-1 for 3. That's not exciting, but that's not why you're playing it. You're playing it because of that discard outlet. But it does regenerate too, which does make it persistent and a pretty good blocker. Phyrexian Altar, another powerful rare here. It fixes color. It's also going to ramp you out quite a bit. If you have a bunch of little creatures, Rakdos especially is in the mood to make little creatures and sacrifice them for benefit. But you could get a lot of mana in one turn doing this, which could lead to a really big play, one of those big creatures we've been talking about perhaps, or just little advantages here or there by sacrificing maybe just one creature, or finding a creature that could actually come back from the graveyard like the Mere Servitors we just saw, right? That could be really sweet with this card. Again, so much you can do with this. Even if you're not getting greedy with colors, you're going to play this for the ramp. Here's a great mythic, Platinum Imperium. You're not going to see this a lot, but if you can play with it, do it. 8 casting cost, 8/8, your life total can't change. Really tough for your opponent to deal with. Now, not only is it a big creature, but if your opponent can't get rid of it, they can't beat you due to life loss. They're going to have to mill you out or something. And in this set, that could happen. I mean, you could mill yourself out sometimes. But for the most part, this is going to make you a lot safer, especially if you can reanimate it here or there. Let's say I do get this thing out. Maybe I ramp into it or something. My opponent has an answer. I reanimate it later and bring it back. They have to have another answer. That's going to be really hard for them to get around. Secondly, if I'm really aggressive and have a lot of strong creatures, I don't have to worry about crackback. I can win a race real easy with this out, of course. Awesome ability on this card. Prismatic Lens, great mana rock here. It only costs 2, it taps for colorless. It also filters in case you are getting a little deeper into colors, maybe a 3rd, 4th, or even 5th color. This will help you, but I really like the fact that it's still just a mana rock to ramp you out. Vessel of Endless Rest. This is coming to Pauper for the first time, so that's worth noting. Another mana rock here. This one's going to cost you 1 more, but it's still good because this time you can tap it for any color of mana. Very sweet if you're going into a 3rd color, even if it's just a splash, or if you're trying to go deeper than that, even better. Now, it also does something else. When it enters the battlefield, you get to select a card from a graveyard, and it goes to the bottom of that owner's library. So, what's going to happen here is maybe I'm worried about milling myself. It does slow down that clock a little bit, but more importantly, if my opponent has something in their graveyard that I'm worried they might be planning on reanimating or something like that down the line, then I can move that to the bottom of their library, which is going to be very good too a lot of the time in this set. You can't do it at instant speed here, unfortunately, so if they target something, you're out of luck, but you can get ahead of it a little bit, which is nice. Ancient Tomb, as we move into lands, here's a rare that's another no-brainer. If you get it, play it. Tap for 2 colorless mana that's very powerful. Now, there's some drawbacks here. When you do that, you're going to take 2 damage, so you do have to keep that in mind. Secondly, you can't get colored mana out of here, so you do have to start thinking about your deck build, and we're going to see this a lot in the lands today. There's a lot of really cool non-basic lands that might only give you colorless mana, and if you have a 50-50 2-color deck, that might not be a big deal. You could make that part of your mana base, but if you're going deeper, you're trying to go like 4 colors or even stronger into a 3rd color, this could be a drawback for you. There are times you're going to want to run some of these lands actually in a spell spot as opposed to one of your land spots. So basically like running an extra land because of color considerations. That could happen with this one, but I do think it's going to be more prevalent with some of the other cards we're going to look at later. Just remember that when you're deck building. Generally though, awesome card. It's going to help you get ahead of curve, and that's always powerful. Cavern of Soul is at Mythic, so it won't show up a lot, but it could be tough to work into some builds. Here's the way I look at this. Look at your build. Look at your creature types. If you have enough of a certain creature type where you feel like this is going to be okay for you and you're going to take the risk that sometimes this will be colorless mana, then go for it. There's a lot of zombies out there in black. There's humans all over the place as usual. So there are certain creature types that might be a little more prevalent. And if it happens that you have enough of those in your deck, this will be just fine. Aside from that, though, I could be splashing a third color that's a creature that's important to me. And if that's the case, I could always name that creature type, and this will help me get that splash out. Or maybe you just have an important creature that you do not want to get countered. Could be good in that capacity as well. So just look at your deck. Sometimes you don't play this. If most of the time it's just going to give you colorless mana, you might as well skip it. But a lot of the time, I think you can make it work. Celestial Colonnade, first creature land of the day. All 5 of these will be at rare. And they're going to be great if you want to fix color first and foremost. They do slow you down a little bit coming into play tapped, but if you need to fix color or splash a third, they will be phenomenal. Aside from that, though, they all have a great ability for the most part, and we'll look at each one individually, of course, but this one's awesome. 5 mana to turn this into a 4/4 flying vigilance creature until end of turn. You can actually turn this into a creature, attack with it, and then still tap it for mana. Yeah, that's kind of awesome, right? This card is phenomenal. It has evasion. It's very sizable for this set, especially. Yeah, it costs a little mana to make that happen. It's also very durable, though, considering it is a land. You could use All as Dust, for example, and this isn't going anywhere, so that's kind of awesome. Now, this also is a defensive option. I mean, Vigilance 4/4 with flying. If you have enough mana, you could attack with it and also keep up the mana to use it as a blocker if you need to. And that's true of all of these creature lands that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to be a little more focused on them offensively, but they do slow down a game if you need them to and you have mana to activate them. This one is especially beefy as well. Maybe the best one in a very good cycle. Here's another one, Creeping Tar Pit. This becomes an unblockable creature until end of turn for 3 mana. Now, this is perfect for that color combination too. It's going to be a little more controlling anyway, so just pushing across damage and having a creature that might be hard to deal with is going to be perfect. Much like Celestial Colonnade, this is also just good for mana fixing too. Dakmor Salvage. This card can get crazy because of the Dredge 2. Now, if you don't care about the Dredge 2, just play a Swamp, just because this comes into play tapped, it slows you down. And of course, if your opponent happens to have back to basics, that can be annoying. So you're not going to take that risk if you don't need to. However, if you want that Dredge, it can do a lot for you. Maybe Golgari colors will just appreciate Dredge generally to help populate the graveyard. You could be in the Dimir colors trying to mill yourself. This will help you there. I like this, though, with some of the crazy combos. Seismic Assault. If you're in red, you don't even need to be in black to find value here. Play Seismic Assault, pitch this, do 2 damage to something, Dredge 2, take it back, repeat. That's kind of awesome, right? There's just a lot of different things you can do with this. Dark Depths. All right, here's another mythic. And I guess the dream here is to get this in Thespian Stage and Rare, which is probably never going to happen. But if it ever did, you're going to have an amazing day, right? Like, that's an incredible combo. Can you play this fair, though? Yeah, I think you can play this fair and limited and actually pull it off sometimes. It's going to require a lot of mana over time, but you can get there. And if you do, again, it could be game-winning. Desolate Lighthouse. I like the loot. I especially like it in this set where discarding could mean a lot of good things for me, whether it's populating the graveyard with a reanimation target, populating a graveyard with something else that another card could care about, like spider spawning looking for creatures, or just simply using madness cards off that discard. This card will be super sweet for you. Even if I don't have any crazy tricks in mind, just looting for 3 mana consistently is really strong. Flagstones of Trocaire, here's another rare, and this one I don't think is going to be amazing for you, just simply because the ability is not that strong in Limited. It's good in some Legacy decks, but in Limited it's not going to do a lot. Basically, it's going to feel like a Plains that's legendary and actually can be shut off by Back to Basics, so that's not good. And if it does come off the battlefield to the graveyard, maybe Annihilator would do that, but if you're getting annihilated by an Eldrazi, that's the least of your worries trying to get a Plains, right? So I don't think it's going to be all that great there. Yeah, it's just kind of there. It's not unplayable, obviously, in lieu of a Plains, but it's not going to do a lot in this format. Another Mythic here with Crocus. Now, if this does show up, though, it's much more playable than the previous card. It doesn't come into play tapped. It also taps for white mana, so there's some similarities, but the ability is a lot better in the set. Basically, let's look at what it can do for me first. If I have a legendary creature, I can bounce it back to my hand to either protect it, and that might slow down my opponent if they want to use a removal spell, for example, on it. Or I could simply use a Through the Breach on a legendary creature or a Goyo's Vengeance, and then instead of sacking it or exiling it, I could bounce it back to my hand. That could be kind of sweet. Or I just might have a good Enters Battlefield effect on a legendary creature. I want to replay it. A lot you can do just in that capacity. However, this also might slow down your opponent in a lot of situations. For example, they're on the reanimation plan. Maybe they have the Through the Breach or the Goryo's Vengeance or Resurrection or Unburial Rites, and they have a legendary creature that they want to target. Well, they can't really do that when this is on the battlefield. They have to find another way to win, so it could really mess up what they're trying to do. It is vulnerable, again, to like Back to Basics or something like that, but you know what? I don't care about that. I think it's really solid. If I don't have a lot of legendary creatures that I care about bouncing, and I'm in white, I might still play this in my main deck just because I think enough of the time it could matter against my opponent. Now, if I'm not playing white in that circumstance, maybe it's more of a sideboard card for me, but I will definitely bring it in, even if it's in a spell spot if my opponent is playing with some legendary creatures or trying to cheat them in. If they have enchantments on legendary creatures, that could be bad for them too. The card will just be great for you then. Lavaclaw Reach is another one of the creature land rares here. Unfortunately, this is probably the least exciting of them all. Now, it's still not bad. It fixes color. If you care about one of those two colors, wonderful. For 3 mana, this turns into a 2/2 where you can actually spend mana to increase the power till end of turn. What I don't like about that is it can be blocked by like a 2/2. Like, it doesn't have trample or anything unless you can give it trample. It's not expensive to turn on, and it's better than nothing if I need to use a dual land in those colors. So again, it's going to be very, very playable for you, but maybe just not as exciting as some of the others. Mage Ring Network, basically a mana battery land for colorless mana. Just like I said at the beginning of this section, you got to be careful if you're going too deep into colors. You don't want to necessarily choose to make this one of your lands in that case. But if you care about this ramping, then you might just put it in a spell spot and just play an extra land, right? So there are times where you might care more than others. This does take a little time and some of your resources, though, to build up, but the payoffs could be really good, as we've seen today. Mistveil Plains, this one's kind of interesting. Comes into play tap, so it does slow you down a little bit, but it does tap for white mana. For a white and tap, I can take a card from my graveyard, put it to the bottom of my deck, but I can only do that if I have 2 or more white permanents. Feels a little strange, but okay. Why would I do that? Well, a couple reasons, I guess. I could be milling myself really aggressively, maybe in Azorius colors especially, and I start to get a little nervous if I don't have like a Laboratory Maniac in play or something like that. Then, alright, maybe I could start putting some cards back to protect myself a little bit. That's one way to look at it. And if you choose powerful cards, you might have some powerful draws down the stretch if the game does go really long, right? So there's some advantage to be had there. Secondly, if an opponent is trying to target something in your graveyard to get rid of it, this is a way to tuck it and protect it. Yeah, it could be fine there too. I don't know if I'm going to see myself playing this though in most cases. I feel like there's a very specific build, and that would be a strong mill deck where I would think about this. Phyrexian Tower, this one's a rare. It's a good way to ramp yourself out with black mana though, but you do have to sacrifice a creature and tap to do that. You get 2 black in that case. Or you tap for colorless mana, so you still have that option as well, but consider that could be an issue for some decks sometimes. Now, with that being said, will you be able to find a creature to sacrifice, especially if you're in like Rakdos? Yeah, probably. I mean, Rakdos is all about getting small creatures, sacrificing them for benefit. If this is one of the benefits and it allows you to ramp out faster and get ahead of curve, that could be pretty good for you. Raging Ravine, another one of the rare creature lands. Very good if you care about red or green, and the creature stats are pretty strong too. It's a 3/3, but every time it attacks, it gets a counter. So the first time it attacks, it does go in as a 4/4. That's actually pretty substantial for 4 mana. This will be great for Gruul and other builds as well. Rogue's Passage, good uncommon here. This can steal some games. It does tap for colorless mana, which again might be awkward in some decks, so you might think about putting it in a spell slot sometimes. But regardless, you can just steal a game with a big creature if your opponent doesn't have an answer for it. Paying 4 mana, creature becomes unblockable. Sometimes there's just nothing an opponent can do about that. Even if they get rid of one creature, you could do it to another creature next turn. It's very persistent and annoying. Stirring Wildwood, the last of the creature lands in rare, this time in Selesnya colors, and the creature ability is pretty good here for 3, a 3/4 reach creature. A little more defensive, but it does protect you against flyers, which is nice. However, I'll say this, a 3/4 is still very sizable in this environment. You have a lot of small creatures, you have a handful of really big creatures, but there's not a lot in the middle, so a 3/4 actually can have board presence here. Terramorphic Expanse, great way to fix colors. I mean, it does slow you down a little bit, but you don't care about that if you're going a little deeper into colors for sure. And what I really appreciate in this set is there are ways to recur this. So if you can get this back and use it a couple times and within your deck get the colors you need, could be especially good here. Thespian Stage at rare. Do you play this if you don't have Dark Depths? I don't know, maybe some of the time. Taps for colorless mana, again, sometimes that will be awkward in certain builds. Pay 2 and tap and you get to copy another land. It could be an opponent's land, could be one of your lands. So in the long run, this could still give you color. Basically, it will just be a little slow. You have to pay 2 and then wait a turn. But if that's the case, yes, you can get maybe a color that you need out of it at the right time. So that is something to consider. Secondly, a non-basic land with an important ability, you could copy again, whether it's yours or someone else's, and get that ability. I don't know if I'm main decking this though, unless I have a non-basic land that I really, really care about. Maybe if my opponent plays some non-basics, I could side this in to try to copy theirs. Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. This is a good card at rare, but I don't know if it's necessarily great in this particular environment. I just can't think of a lot to do with it. Like, if I really care about getting a lot of black mana, well, wonderful. It's going to turn all the lands into swamps in addition to what they are, including this, so this will tap for black mana. Or maybe I have a lot of non-basic lands that are giving me colorless mana, and I'm a little concerned about that. This could mitigate that, but I don't know how consistent that's going to be. The downside here is this also works on your opponent's land, so you might be helping them out and not even realize it. So again, I don't know if there's a lot of places where I see myself playing it. It's got to be a very specific situation where I care about the mana. Alright, with that being said, we got there. That concludes the set review. So I hope you get a chance to play this at least a little bit with Draft or Sealed, because it seems like a really fun environment. Now, it is expensive, that's the problem, but it is cheaper on Magic Online, so that's a consideration. Or maybe you bought a box just to crack open and get the cards out of it and have fun. Invite a friend over, play a little Sealed, at least with some of the packs. I think you'll have a good time. So until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page, as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.